Hello and welcome to this episode of the Garden of Earthly Blights. I'm your host Reese, and today with the help of Tony and Louisa, we're going to be giving up on Pretty because Mitski told us to. Mitski is a Japanese-American singer and songwriter with hit songs such as Washing Machine Heart and Nobody. Her music has appeared on TV show Adventure Time and has featured in the end credits of the film Everything Everywhere All at Once, a film I cannot recommend more for you to watch. Both film and TV show are very close to my heart, and as you will come to find out, so is Mitski. So we thought it would be fun to listen to her music and share some of our thoughts on the themes she discusses. In this first visually recorded installment of the podcast, we talk beauty standards, the patriarchy, the experiences of women and femme-presenting people, as well as other topics that Mitski's music deals with. We hope you enjoy. For the people watching this episode of the podcast, the video will begin shortly, but before we get into it too much, there is a trigger warning for some themes of suicide and death, so if that will affect you in any way, then just prepare yourself. To me, Mitski's music deals with struggles between her American and Japanese heritages and trying to assimilate the two. Being that she moved around a lot as a child, it seems she often sings about a longing or pining for love and happiness, portraying herself as being on the outside and wanting to get into those things. She also sings about being perceived as a woman moving through life, especially when it comes to aging and being in or past your prime, so to speak. To me, she is just one of the best lyricists out there, and the poetry that she weaves into her music is unparalleled. She speaks to so many people for so many reasons, which I love. We wanted to introduce our topics in this episode using clips from her songs that we thought best encompassed them or represented them in a very poetic way. So without further ado, please enjoy this clip from the song Last Words of a Shooting Star by Mitski.
All of this turbulence wasn't forecasted. Apologies from the intercom. And I am relieved that I left my room tidy. They'll think of me kindly when they come for my things. I always wanted to die clean and pretty, but I'd be too busy on working days. So I am relieved that the turbulence wasn't forecasted. I couldn't have changed anyways. I am relieved that I'd left my room tidy. Goodbye.
So, I hope you enjoyed that little clip, but playing all throughout the song, you might have picked up on like a staticky noise, and that's a recording that Mitski herself took from a plane that she was on, which had a lot of turbulence, and that inspired the song. And so the shooting star in the title is ultimately the plane that she's on if it caught fire and crashed. So it's quite dark, but I don't know, poetic in a way, like she's turning it into like if someone was to see it in the distance, they might think, oh, it's a shooting star, but really it's just a plane going down, like crashing and burning. So I don't know, it's dark in that sense, but it's nice to me because it's about, you know, giving up on trying to control everything, but finding peace in that. So she says, I always wanted to die clean and pretty, but I'd be too busy on working days. So I'm relieved that the turbulence wasn't forecasted. I couldn't have changed anyways. She wasn't warned that she was going to die on this flight. She wasn't warned about the turbulence in her life. Because like if she was, she would have just spent her whole life worrying about it. And, you know, in the end, couldn't have changed it anyway. So the worrying would have been futile. And I think that's a good outlook to have on life. But the side where she says, you know, talking about how she wanted to die clean and pretty, reflects the way that women have been in history and sometimes still are taught to behave by society, to not take up space, to be pretty and presentable at all times, and in this case, even in death. And, you know, this is a trend that's been seen, so trigger warning for suicide here, but there has been a trend for more violent suicides among men than there have been in women, which just shows the sentiment that women want to keep to themselves and maybe think more about the comfort of other people around them, so like, you know, what they're going to leave behind. And that's quite like
That's insane to me. Like the idea of who's going to clean up.
Yeah. I think maybe women think more about what they're leaving behind, like what the people behind like have to deal with.
Yeah.
They're more, even in death, such a very personal, the most like, it's maybe weird to say, but intimate thing. Like suicide is like, you think of it as like this person is going through so much struggle and it's all within them and they just can't escape from it.
Mm-hmm.
And like to think that women are still potentially worrying about things like that, you know, whereas men maybe are sort of not thinking about that as much. I don't know.
And the idea of being prepared as well, like, oh, it's good that I didn't know I was dying because had I known, I would have had to prepare.
Yeah.
Or people would have judged me otherwise, like, oh, I can't believe she didn't do that. And it's just that having to maintain appearances, having to, like, you know, cultivate a flawless exterior. It's fucking exhausting.
Yeah, the whole song to me, like, I was thinking as I was making my cup of coffee downstairs, like, the line about the bell in its original rules.
Yeah.
I always try to figure out what that meant, at least to me.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, it's a replica, and it's silently housed. So it's like, it's not even real, and it's not fulfilling its function. In the same way that prettiness, it's not real, and it doesn't, or it shouldn't fulfill a human being. It shouldn't be like, they found me pretty now, I can rest.
Yeah.
Oh,
like it
I've
shouldn't be a
never
goal
heard
to
that.
achieve.
Yeah,
Expressing
and
that
it's so
sentiment.
scary to think that, because I think for a lot of my life I was so concerned about, I like how I say I was, I'm not sure if it's still past tense, but concerned about how I was perceived by others, that I was not, you can't reach fulfillment, you can't reach self-realization. Actualization.
Yes.
Thank you, my dear psychologist. Without, if you're so concerned about your exteriority.
Right.
And yeah, it's exhausting, and it's so much energy invested into nothing.
I don't
To
know
a
if I've
replica.
mentioned it to you guys, but I used to have this, again, used to as if I've fully grown out of it, not necessarily, but I'm getting better at it. Imagining my life whenever I was thinking back to a moment, unless it was really like sensorially intense, it would always be an outside view of myself. And when I was, for example, talking about someone or doing something that reminded me of someone, most often like a male gaze, I would project that, and my imagination would be of me from the outside. And then I just started putting in the, you know, effort of trying to see things through my eyes and then think back to how I felt, because, you know, of course those things are tied, and it just makes you so removed from your own personal experience.
Yeah. God, it's like everything has to be validated by a man, and if there's no man around to validate it,
You
I'll make
invoke
the
that-
one in my head do it. Like,
Exactly.
insane.
It's like that thing of like, people say, I remember when like, it was like a trend on TikTok, or not like a trend, but like when people were talking about the male gaze and stuff like that, it was like, oh, me when I'm doing such a simple task, and then I realized I have to perform for the cameras, and then people were like, babe, that's not the cameras, that's the male gaze. Like you feel like you need to be looking a certain way while you're bending over to put your laundry in the washing machine right now. Like, that's not the cameras, that's like an internal thing. Because it was like often like women talking about this, and it was like, no, like non-women like speaking about it. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I had an aspect of that when I was younger, and it definitely felt like the cameras for me. I was like, someone's watching this, and that's why now I revel so much in being able to know that I can't be perceived in any way. Like, I don't want anyone to hear me, I don't want anyone to see me, and it's not because I feel like I'm doing something dodge, it's that I feel like if I'm not in that space, people are always looking at me anyway, so I need this time where I know absolutely no one can see me, so I can play my YouTube video one click louder than I normally would, or so I can have my brightness all the way up and not have to worry about someone looking over my phone, even though I'm playing like 10:10 on my phone. Like, I'm not doing anything or texting anyone. I need to just follow it. And when I was younger, it was definitely just a lot of insecurity. I really did not like how I looked. I felt like very out of the ordinary in a way, I guess. Like I wasn't like the other kids. And it was a large portion of that was my weight. I was very conscious of my weight as a child. I did not like taking my top off. I still don't. And like I used to love swimming so much, but I hated the whole rigmarole of being in the changing room, and especially around kids at school, because we used to go to swimming club on like every Wednesday, and I used to love it so much. It was my favorite part. I was in like the top class for swimming because I was so good, but I would just hated the beginning and end of it and getting out, and I was always covering up, and I was always aware of that. And then that just translated into every part of my life. I was like, oh my god, people are looking at me. They're looking how my t-shirt is sitting on my body, or like right now, like how do I like, I don't know. And I used to have this thing of like, I never wanted to wear winter coats because they would make me look, I thought like, oh, I'm gonna look so fat, like I don't want to look like this and look so big. And I would always say this like my mum, and she'd be like you need to be warm, what do you mean? And I was like, I don't think I ever said like I'm gonna look fat, or maybe I did, but I was like, I like if they're too big, it makes me look too big. I don't want to look big. I hated puffer jackets for that reason, and I never wanted to wear them. But my mum was like, you're gonna be freezing, like wear this. And it was like such a shame that I had that as like an 8-year-old, as a 9-year-old, and younger probably. And I remember, sorry, this is like a lot. I remember
go.
When I was changing, I think it was for my school play, in my year 6 school play, and we had like one of the teachers in the room just to make sure that like we were okay. And she obviously like she wasn't being a creep or anything. She was just like sitting there because we were kids unsupervised. And I remember it was just me and her in there changing. And I remember well, she wasn't changing, I was just changing. And I remember saying to her like, I was making sure, I was like telling her like, don't look, and she was like, trust me, I'm not going to be looking, because this is like some adult and this is like some child. Like she was not that way inclined.
She was aware of other politics, and you were just aware that you were going to be seen.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking like, oh, that's weird for an adult. I was like, I don't want you to see my, like, this is like, you can't see how my body looks as a 9-year-old. Like I feel so self-conscious about it. And yeah, that was just always present. I always hated it. So yeah, that was like my experience with the cameras and how that.
Yeah.
And that's I still feel it. I still feel that there are cameras there, but I get like weird things sometimes. Like if I'm sitting in like a window, I think, oh my god, like I know what's around me. I think, oh my god, there's a sniper pointed at my head right now. Like there's not like I can't like have my back to the window, like someone's staring at me, or like, you know, things like that. That's just like weird paranoia, I think. But
a sniper at your head.
Yeah, a sniper. And I worry for my mum, because my mum sits in front of the window at her desk, and I'm like, Mum, someone's on the roof. Like they're pointing at you.
Let them catch you slipping.
No. But and then I always seem to think like if I look good for the sniper, they won't shoot me.
See, but that wow.
It's so funny. Like I don't know.
Is a sniper a man?
Let's be real. We know that sniper's a man. Only a man could do something like that. Something so sinister. No, Becky.
We're not an anti-man podcast.
No, we're not. We are not.
What?
No.
Only when they misbehave.
Only when they misbehave, yeah. But so going back to this song, she's got another lyric which I like. It's about this perception: I'm relieved that I left my room tidy. They'll think of me kindly when they come for my things. And you know, she's again thinking of how she's going to be perceived here, even after she's gone. There's like an acknowledgement that the world will go on after she's dead, and she hopes that whoever comes for her things, you know, maybe her family, they'll think kindly of her when they come to get her things from her apartment or whatever. And it's such a small thing, like, you know, I'm glad I tidied my room, or like, it's just one of the things to worry about. And something that my mum would get us to do before, like, we'd go on holiday. I don't know if your parents ever got you to do this. It'd be like, oh, let's like mad dash to clean the house so we've got something nice to come back to. And I feel like something like a lot of families do. They're like, we've got to clean the house so when we come back, it's nice. And, you know, looking at it in Mitski's way, it's like such a sad concept versus the way that we always used to clean the house was so when we came back it'd be something nice. But she's thinking of that, and I like to think she had that same experience of her parents being like, we've got to tidy up, we've got to make the place look presentable so when you come back it's nice. But she's looking at it in that way, and I think that part of her storytelling is like really relatable, and a lot of people can relate to parts of that experience.
What's interesting is that I was reading about her life as a kid, and she was kind of like an army brat.
Yeah, she was.
So she was like moving across the world a lot.
Yeah.
So there would have been a lot of times where she was leaving places and never coming back. And maybe she was wondering like, what are the next people gonna think of me? Even though they won't know her name, her face, but know her, you know.
Like, what have we left behind for them? Like,
yeah,
what marks on the wall,
that's
things like
so
that. Yeah.
Interesting to me.
Yeah. I think that's kind of like informed a lot of her writing as well, like, because she lived everywhere, and nobody, she talks about going back to Malaysia, I think it was, and she really enjoyed living there when she was there with her parents, and she went back there as an adult, but she didn't know anyone, she didn't have any like roots there, and so she goes back to it and she's thinking how much of a good time she had, but it's just her now. And so she's like, that's why she sings nobody, because she's like singing that, and like she talked about listening to the people, like she would just open the window and hear the people walking past in the apartment that she was staying. That would be her way of like interacting with the world.
Wow.
Because she was like so like, I don't know if she like was a bit reclusive at that time or what, but yeah. Yeah, I think, are we ready for the next song? You guys got anything more you wanted to add on that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. Like the idea of dying pretty is just crazy to me, and I think it's just thinking about the fact that the sexualization of women doesn't end after they pass away.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like you'll see people on social media being reported dead, and then the comments making jokes about visiting the morgue, and it's just
right.
And people have no shame, and they think that's, you know, dark humor.
Yeah, it's edgy.
No,
yeah.
your mind went there. Your mind went there.
Yeah.
You thought of this person, their whole life. Everyone who probably knew them is thinking about their whole life and subjectivity and trajectory right now, and you're again just looking at their like
what their
shell.
body can do for her.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of my point, and also what we discussed a little bit earlier on about
Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah. And
I thought that's who you were talking about.
Yeah.
The experience of that death still not being a freedom from
the public eye.
Yeah, the public eye, and the concern about how you're perceived, and this idealization of your figure.
Yeah. Yeah. It was that she never, like, nothing of hers was ever hers, because it was so publicized and like commodified and all of that. Like, I know they do this with a lot of celebrities, but they like had auctions of her makeup, and people were like scrambling and like trying to get her original stuff. And just knowing that the way that she was treated by the media, that she couldn't even have her makeup just be left to her family or just be chucked or whatever.
Like, chuck it in the bin, like. Because
people have this, and I saw a video of this woman, and she was like a makeup collector, and she had like her original lipstick, and it was like still had lipstick in it, and I'm like, that's a grotty, rusty lipstick bullet. Throw it away. Like, I get the the cultural impact of it, and like how she was such a style icon, but you know, she never had anything of hers. And I was saying to you as well, Louisa, beforehand, the plot that she was buried in, or like in the mausoleum or whatever, people were reserving their plots for when they died around her, so they, or like the ones above and below her, so they could be like lying on top of her in her death, and they could be like close to her like that. And I just think, how far removed are you from this woman's humanity that you think that that's okay? And I don't know, I think that's captured well in this song, but through the things that we spoke about, I think. And she does a great job at framing that in a relatable and personal way.
And still so beautiful.
Yeah.
She do it? I don't know.
One thing about Mitski, she's gonna sing about the most gut-wrenching thing in the most beautiful way. Yeah. Well, on that note, to another gut-wrenching song. The next clip we want to play is from Mitski's song, Your Best American Girl. Okay, so I hope you guys could feel through that. I mean, listen to all of these songs throughout after you've listened to this episode, but listen to all these songs throughout and you'll get it. But I hope the lyrics that you did here were good enough to get the gist. And so the first one I think you will have heard is potentially like my favorite Mitski lyric of all time. It just really, I don't know, spoke to me. You're the sun, you've never seen the night, but you hear its song from the morning birds. Well, I'm not the moon, I'm not even a star, but awake at night I'll be singing to the birds. And it's so, like, she just creates little stories and little things in these lines.
Yeah.
And it's so sweet, you know, to me, Mitski's, she's realizing the differences between herself and this other person, her as half Japanese and half American. She's not the moon, she's not even a star, she can't compare to this person, but she still finds her own way to communicate to this person through the birds. And I feel like that's as close as she feels like she'll ever get, is talking to the birds, to sing to this American boy. And she's buying into this idea of being an outsider, I think, despite still being part of the same culture. She's still American. And even in the song title, it's Your Best American Girl. She's trying to be the best American version of herself, but not for herself, but for this all-American boy. You know, the American part of her doesn't even belong to her anymore because she's so far removed from that aspect of her culture, or she's been pushed out of it, or made to feel like she's been pushed out of it. But something I like in the song later on, the line changes. Instead of Your Best American Girl, it turns into The Best American Girl. And I really like that. She's claiming it for herself. She's no longer anyone else's best version. She just is the best version of herself and for herself. And that's just, I don't know. That line really, I don't know, resonated with me. What experiences do you guys have with assimilating your cultures? I don't know if you guys want to share with the listeners what they are in case they don't know.
Do you want to start?
If you have any.
Do you want me to start?
I can start. Okay. So, I mean, I've never felt like I had to assimilate
Yeah.
my culture with like anyone else's. I feel like so as a Black British person, like there are moments where I've been made to feel like I'm not British enough,
Right.
and then moments where I've been made to feel like I'm not Nigerian enough. But I mean, that was really, I think it was definitely a product of small town country living, because when I got to uni, I remember telling my friends this, but like I got to uni and I realised microaggressions aren't just a part of everyday life. Like,
Right.
And I was like, well, this is kind of nice.
Reality does exist without them.
Yeah, like you can actually get through the day without someone commenting on your hair or how different you are.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like the idea of being on the outside looking in, like kind of looking at all my peers get boyfriends and have their first kisses and stuff. And they'd always be like, oh, like, we don't get why you haven't had your first kiss. And I was like, in my head, I know why.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my experience with assimilation.
Yeah.
And beauty standards. Should I, like, talk about my... So, okay. I was in... If you haven't watched the first episode, listen to the first episode.
Listen. Oh my god.
Pause this and go listen and come back.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's lore. There's lore. Lore.
There's Garden of Earthly Blights universe.
Yes. The TJEB CU.
CU. So I was super ill at the beginning of this year, to the point of, you know, being paralyzed and losing a lot of my hair and losing a lot of weight, like half my body weight, and I looked different, basically. I looked very different. And also for so long I'd been kind of like I'd resigned from feeling like a young person, because being ill and being kind of newly disabled, I was kind of getting to grips with accepting a life where, like, I always thought I'd travel as a kid, And then, like, when I felt ill, I was like, well, that can't happen. There's just no
Right.
way. And I was just, like, giving up on a lot of my dreams. And the idea of finding a partner, I was like, well, how? I can't, like, go to parties.
Yeah.
And anyway, that was all restored, like, after my hospital experience. And so the first, like, big event, dress-up event I went to was this ball that I'd actually been looking forward to for, like, 4 years. But it'd been cancelled, COVID, whatever. And I actually ended up wearing the dress that I'd wanted to wear, like, in first year when it was meant to happen. And I never thought I'd get the dress because whatever, it's not important. And anyway, yeah, I'd planned for so long for this event, and, you know, the makeup and the dress, and I was so excited. And when it all came together, I was so crestfallen because I just felt so ugly. And all that was made worse when, you know, you go into this space full of your peers, who are prettier than you, smarter than you, richer than you, all the, you know, good things than you. And I kind of just ruined the night for myself. I was like,
Right.
the whole time thinking about how undesirable I was, and not about, I'm back with my friends.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm back in
I've made it to this
college.
event I never thought
I've
I'd
made
be
it to
at,
this
despite
event.
the odds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I woke up paralysed and unable to speak, and now I'm, like,
You get to dance.
dancing
Yeah.
with my friends. Like, come on. And anyway, 2 nights later, I was, like, up in my friend's flat having a cuppa. And I felt so heavy still from this event, and so I, like, was on my iPad typing my feelings. And I thought I'd share. I haven't read this since I typed it, so we're all going to be in for a surprise.
Live reaction. Yeah.
So yeah, let's just open it up. I feel so funny reading from an iPad.
No. They had iPads in the 90s.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Everyone knows that.
They do. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just going to read it out now. So the ball was yesterday, which I'd been waiting for 4 years. That's a sentence where you say 3 times. I honestly did not enjoy it that much. It would be hard to enjoy anything you had waited 4 years for. I got the dress that I had wanted years ago for this event, but I didn't have the body or the health or the hair. I lost a lot of hair due to my hospital experience. When you're in the ICU, you tend to lose a lot, and then I was, like, on chemo and stuff, so you had very thin hair. I, in a way, ruined my night for myself because I was so overcome with insecurity in a way that I'd never been before. I don't know if I overestimate my security in my looks, or if being surrounded by so many others of my peers who had what I wanted, intimate relationships, health, fitness, freedom, painlessness, had made me notice it. I forgot that I had not been around my peers much in the last few years and months. Being in a context in which you are in competition and are aware and waiting of being or not being chosen is crushing. Anyway, it made me dislike myself. Not just physically, but also I disliked myself for caring. I thought back to when I woke up from a coma at the beginning of this year, and how differently I saw myself and others, and how much I had hoped that this was a thing that fundamentally changed in me. But it turned out not to be the case. And that just like the muscle memories of my body needing a bit more time to revive themselves, so too did the muscle memory of my mind. And in that muscle memory is judgment of people's acne, their protruding bellies, their thin hair, the funny way they walk, their hands and fingernails, how they talk, everything. It came flooding back, and I was so upset that this change was not intrinsic, but a change I'd have to practice and work at. Being critically ill has changed everything for me. There are many things I lost that I hope to regain. I hated the way my body looked last night. I thought my face seemed so ugly and strange. My height made it harder for me to hide my dance moves that I now believe to be awkward, and my health made it so the whole night I was in pain, trying to disguise the muscle fatigue I was feeling as just taking a breather. It's getting really tiring disliking myself. I often wonder where it came from. I'm getting really tired of hiding who and what I am, in quite literally every sense there is of the term. I don't want to feel like I need to hide bits of myself to be liked, loved, or acceptable. Can I be liked, loved, and accepted when the I in question is not fully present but fragmented? I just want to love myself, and I think my rehabilitation so far has prioritised my physical changes but neglected what is going on in my mind. I think it's telling that so many of my diary entries are strategies on how to change myself. I need to figure out myself, my values, and what I believe in, and I think I need to take some distance and stop looking for love. If it finds me, hallelujah. If not, at least I will have found myself.
Wow.
I'm kind of surprised by some bits in there. I'm like, oh, okay.
I teared up a bit. And for more than one bit, it's just like, yeah. I need a moment.
Me too.
But thank you for
Thank you,
sharing.
yes, so much
Thanks
for sharing.
for making me feel like
Yeah.
held, guys. God, yeah, I need a mo.
Yeah.
I have a question actually that might lead us on to the next. But did you, because you were talking about external love, like your friends loved your parents loved. Did you feel like you could love yourself in that state, or?
Oh gosh. Trying to remember. I maybe not, just because I felt like I feel like with autoimmune disease it's really strange because your body's trying to kill you. Yeah. And so I felt like I couldn't trust my body. I remember like before the hospitalization, like I just didn't know what I was gonna wake up to any given day, and so it was like I couldn't make plans, or I'd always cancel plans, or like I didn't know if I'd be able to like brush my teeth the next day or have a shower or eat, because I couldn't trust my body. And then when I woke up in hospital, I was like, well, there she goes again, you know. So yeah, I guess so. And I mean, the strange thing is, for a lot of, especially like the early days of the ICU, I think because you're so ill, and like you're ill in a way where it's like from minute to minute you could die, you stop thinking about kind of like, if we can be Cartesian for a second, about like the metaphysical parts of you, and you're just like in your physical body. And so I definitely lost a sense of dignity. I just kind of felt like an animal.
It's dehumanizing.
It's
massively.
dehumanizing.
Or when you were saying about brushing your teeth, not showering, it strips everything away from you.
Yeah.
And you have to just put your life in the hands of everyone around you. And I think that can be really hard for some people to come to terms with. Did you feel like that was hard for you to just let go and let other people do? Yeah,
especially as like, you know, I felt like I was quite independent before and like adventurous and like, you know, drop of a hat, like let's just do something.
Yeah.
And then to go from that to like having my friends, you know, cook for me and pick up food for me. And there was one night when my friends carried me into the bathroom and helped me brush my teeth. And it just felt like, again, the whole time I felt like a burden, because it's like I could do nothing for them in return. Yeah, it's like it just wasn't a good feeling. In a hospital, it's like fine, because that's
their job,
and it's like for a lot of them, it's their passion, like to look after people. But yeah, I don't know what.
The reason why I asked is because, for me, again, on a much lesser impactful, life-changing way, I mean, it was life-changing in my, you know, but I mean, in terms of what was still available for me physically, was still a lot more, but still, because of this, of feeling like I was losing my body, like I couldn't trust it because I didn't feel, like I felt hunger and then the food would arrive and I couldn't eat it. And I'm a foodie, and so that I lost that part of my personality. Then I didn't feel like curvy anymore. And I mean, you asked about assimilation, I didn't really answer, but like Brazilian women are taught, like, first of all, we consume a lot of American content to relate to the song, which is why I sound like this and not, I don't have a stereotypical Brazilian accent. And then that's the experience that you're kind of aiming at. Like, that's the universe that you're told to consume. All of the films you can think about of the girl becoming pretty and removing the glasses and like Princess Diaries and whatnot.
Yeah.
But then there's this like hypersexualization of Brazilian women, and then for myself, I for a long time I think didn't realize that people just wanted to be my friend. I didn't see the qualities in me that would make me like desirable company, but I realized that there was some other desire that made people spend time with me. And then I just banked on that. I was like, fine, okay, you may not want to be my friend, but you might be attracted to me. So I'll use that to surround myself with people. So then I lost that. And then I was like, okay, whatever. Then I can't, my body is not offering me any reassurances about myself, then what is there? And then that's kind of how I realized I wanted to think about my soul and about my essence and about, you know, my humanity. Yeah. And then in terms of loving yourself, I don't think maybe I was capable of loving myself before I lost the awareness that my body could enable me to access the world in these ways. It was like, okay, what now? What's left? So maybe, I mean, you connected with a kind of love from your friends that you didn't realize was about you and your essence and not what you could offer in full health, or at your best moment. And yeah, I think for me it was also like a huge internal thing of realizing what it is beyond prettiness.
So I have one more lyric that I wanted to talk about from that song, and it was, "Your mother wouldn't approve of how my mother raised me, but I do. I think I do." And that was like, I don't come from directly an immigrant family. My nan immigrated and then had my dad here, and then I'm my dad's child. But on my mum's side, my mum's English, so that wasn't there. But I really resonate with the mother-daughter relationship, and especially of child of an immigrant mother or immigrant parents, and that Mitski's acceptance of how her mother raised her, changing, you know, from trying to assimilate with American culture, and then, you know, saying, I think I do, I think I approve of it, of how she raised me. And it's really special because later on in the song it goes from your mother wouldn't approve of how my mother raised me, but I do, I think I do. It changes to, but I do, I finally do. And when she says that, she puts like emphasis, like she's like breathing out, she's like, sigh of relief, I finally do. And I love that. She then changes it again at the end to, but I do, I think I do, which gives me some like trepidation. I'm like, do you not fully believe in it? Like, why are you returning? You should have stayed on finally, unless it was just like a musical choice she decided to make. It sounded better, I don't know. But I really like that. And in Everything Everywhere All at Once, there is that mother-daughter, immigrant-mother relationship. And that is so gut-wrenching to me, the way that they portray that. I cried so many times in that film. And at the end, when I realized that Mitski was singing at the end, it made me cry so much. And yeah, it just really got to me. I think as well, I had a closeness with my mum growing up. My mum had me when she was 18, and split from my dad when I was like 1 or 2 or something like that. And so it was me and my mum for a lot of the time, and you know, she might have had whoever she was seeing at that time, but I never really, they weren't really like a figurehead in my life. It was my mum always. It was always me and my mum. And I always think about that, and like I live in the house that me and my mum, I say grew up in, which is so funny because I still think of like my mum as having grown up.
Surely she did,
with me.
especially at that age.
Yeah, and I
lovely.
think we must have moved in here when I was maybe, I can't remember how old I would have been. Sorry, mum. Like maybe 3 or 4.
Oh, baby.
You can correct me. I don't know. So I guess my mum would have been about our age, my age, 22.
Yeah,
She would have been about
wow.
22, maybe 23, I think, when she was living here. And that is insane to me when I think about that. and I never really think of us as having struggled or having been poor, because I think my mum created that life for me that I felt like I had everything, which was really nice. And yeah, thank you, Mum.
Oh.
So yeah, like,
Nice.
oh, I'm gonna cry now. Those like relationships and songs really get to me, and so I think Mitski does that well for me. And so does Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't know if you guys have anything to add, how you felt about that lyric, that acceptance. I think, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that poetry.
Yeah.
I love how you grew up together.
Yeah.
I think you probably have a bond that, as someone with not old parents, but like
Older parents.
yeah, older
me.
parents, certainly, yeah. Like we'll never have, which is fine. We have our own thing, but like it looks like a really beautiful, sweet thing.
Yeah.
And I also think that like realizing that you might approve of how your parents raised you also suggests that you're now in a place where you know them as people,
Right.
rather than just your parents, which is really special.
Parental,
if
yeah.
you can get to that point in your relationship where you're going through things that they've been through and you can relate on that, and yeah, it's really special.
Funny you say that, because I was actually telling my dad the other day, like, kind of the day or the time I realised that my parents weren't my parents, like they were people. Devastated. I was like 15. I was like, how could you do this?
Yeah.
I was like that, like they're fallible, can make mistakes, don't know everything. I was honestly shocked, and I felt so like naked and alone and scared.
Yeah.
I remember just being like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So it's funny you say that. I wonder if did you ever have that? Because did it feel like for you and your mum it was like you guys were always like figuring it out as you were going along, or did it feel like she was kind of like this omniscient figure in your life that you just relied on?
Like, yes, I never once growing up thought of my mum as wrong. Everything she said, like I was
The letters.
everything my mum did, I thought, that's how you do it. You're right. You've got it figured out. This is just correct. And I would never fault her for that. And I there's nothing I think back to that I wish she'd have done differently, or I not resented her for, but like, you know, I thought like, I really wish you wouldn't have done that, or I really wish you would have been this. I think she got it all right, which she, I'm sure, doesn't think. But I think, yeah, I never had a moment of realization where you are a real person. I guess I always thought that I think she always kept it very real. And I admire that about her, like the way she thought was the way she thought. And it's funny now, we have conversations and my mum will be very frank about the way that she says things, and I'm like, I would never speak with such like what's the word, like certainty, clarity. Okay. I would never say this is how I feel and I'm always going to feel this way. Not that I think my mum says things like that, but I think like she says her statements as fact almost, and I don't feel like that about myself. But I think I'm having what the realization I'm having about my mum is when I go through the things, and when I turned 18, thinking, oh my gosh, my mum had a child. Like I could not have a child right now. Wow. Or when I was in Canada, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I was 2 years old, I was 3 years old when my mum was my age. Yeah. Like I could not have a 2-year-old right now. And like being in Canada, I was like, my mum could never have this experience. And we had like a touching moment on her birthday. We were sitting on the stairs. Just say we had a very touching moment on the stairs, and it was very nice to have on my mum's 40th to have this conversation with her and just be really real about sort of like my childhood and how like she raised me. And like, yeah, I'm now starting to put myself in those situations and like marking my life by her life, what stage she was at by where I'm at now, and just being like, wow, I really wish you could have had these things that you've given to me. And in a way, I wish, not that you never had me, but I wish you'd had me a bit later so you could have done everything. Yeah. But then I think like, no, she did do a lot of the stuff she wanted to do. She went to concerts still after I was born. My nan would look after me, or you know, someone else would look after me. She'd go to these concerts, she'd still see her friends, and she still had a life all with me. And it's like it's admirable when you think of yourself doing it. It's like, wow, good for you. That's crazy.
Yeah,
you did that.
Incredible.
Well, she might have found a way to get to herself through the experience
Mm.
of being your mom, which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
Like to reinvent yourself through and realizing yourself through being there for someone else. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
We've now come to the end of the first part of this episode. If you want to hear the rest, and we hope you do, tune in a week's time from now, where we'll have entirely given up on Pretty because Mitski told us to. Thank you to Tony and Louisa for sharing your thoughts and intimate feelings with us today, and thank you Mitski for doing what you do. We'll talk to you all next week, but until then, find us on the Garden of Earthly Blights Instagram page @BlightedGarden, where we'll be sharing more of the things that we find interesting, thought-provoking, and maybe slightly enraging. Goodbye.